Hey guys, Tom Barton here from TomBartonSports.com. It's Super Bowl week, and Super Bowl week means a lot of things to a lot of people, but this could be a legacy type of Super Bowl for a couple of Kansas City Chiefs. I want to get into that today. I want to get your opinions. Go check me out at TomBartonSports.com. Tom Barton Sports over on Twitter, and you can always get me at TomBartonSports@gmail.com. So let's get into it, guys. Look, the Super Bowl is here. Philadelphia Eagles, Kansas City Chiefs. And while everybody's building up the idea of the what-if game, right? I mean, you got 2 weeks in between, and you play the what-if game when you talk about the Super Bowl. It's always what if this team wins and what if this team loses. Well, this year, it's about legacy, and when we talk about what if. But it's not a one-sided what if. This does have two sides to it. But let's look at the positives and the good side of the what if, right? If Kansas City wins, there's a lot of what ifs, specifically when you're talking about legacies, and specifically when we're talking about legacies of Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Already this week, we've started to hear the people, the people that jump at the story before time saying, well, Patrick Mahomes is already among the top 10 greatest quarterbacks of all time. Okay, now, if he wins, what does that mean? Well, look, if Patrick Mahomes wins, he has a case to maybe have one of the top 3 or 4, maybe top 10, if you really would want to go out there and really argue the early season and early career of anybody in the league. I mean, you could argue maybe the best 4 or 5 year run when he concludes this season of anybody. He's got multiple MVPs. He could, if he wins again, if he wins a Super Bowl, he's going to have multiple Super Bowl wins and multiple Super Bowl appearances with 3. Oh, that's great. If he wins. If he wins, you will hear the narrative of Patrick Mahomes having to be considered among the top 10. You'll hear the narrative of, oh my goodness, he might be the most talented of all time. Can he be the greatest quarterback of all time? You'll hear that narrative because we live in a generation nowadays where everybody jumps to conclusions before anything really substantiates. And it's fun in a sports talk world to look at the what ifs. What will Patrick Mahomes' rest of his career be? Yeah, the what-ifs of Patrick Mahomes, if the Chiefs win, will be undeniable. He will have to be included among the very few people that have won 2 Super Bowls. He's going to have to be included among the most talented quarterbacks of all time. Some of the best early season careers. Some of the best careers in general when you look at his accomplishments. Not many people won multiple Super Bowls and multiple MVPs. That's Patrick Mahomes. So people will automatically say he's one of the greatest of all times, and I don't think you can argue it if he wins. Absolutely. But if he loses, well, don't we have to have the same discerning eye? If Patrick Mahomes loses, don't we also have to look at this and say it also hurts him? This is a guy that doesn't have good Super Bowls under his belt. Yes, he's 1-1 in Super Bowls, but he's had 2 games played. He's 52 of 91. That's 57.1%. That's not good. He's had 573 net yards. Okay. 3 to 4 touchdown to turnover ratio. Not good. 64.2 passer rating. Much below what Patrick Mahomes is. And a 23.1 QBR. Again, not too good. So he's played in 2 Super Bowls and he has a ring. And he's got the MVPs in his pocket, sure. But if he loses this Super Bowl, well, he goes 1-2. And at 1-2, my contention here is that this could set Patrick Mahomes back to eliminate his career among the greatest of all time. And again, when I say greatest of all time, I am talking the elite of the elite of the elite. I am not talking about Patrick Mahomes is not in the top 10. Oh, he certainly can be. I am not talking about even is Patrick Mahomes in the top 5. He certainly can be. No. I am talking about, are you one of the top 2, top 3, maybe the number 1 all-time quarterback? That conversation and that book will almost be closed if Patrick Mahomes loses another Super Bowl. And let me explain why. Before you go crazy, you go, Tom, look, he's 28 years old next year. Are you kidding me? He's got a whole career ahead of him. Look, first of all, not many guys play into their 40s. We're into a weird generation with Tom Brady's playing till he's 45 years old. And we don't see that, right? So let's just assume that Patrick Mahomes' career is going to be another 10 years. Okay, I think that's being very fair. It brings him to his year 38 season. Even if you want to go 12 and say 40, I can live with that argument, okay? So let's look at it realistically. Patrick Mahomes got 10 to 12 years left. That's a long time. That's a crazy amount of time. And he might go on and win another 3-4 MVPs. Absolutely. But what kind of damage will losing the Super Bowl again this year really do for Patrick Mahomes? I think almost irreparable. Almost irreparable damage when you were talking about the elite of the elite of the elite. And let me explain why. Tom Brady has a slew of Super Bowl rings going across both fingers. We've seen the picture, right? We've seen it all with Tom Brady. Yet, there are detractors that will say, yeah, but Joe Montana's 4-0 in Super Bowls. Now, we don't mention that Joe Montana lost in the NFC Championship game a couple of times. No. The detractors to Tom Brady being the greatest of all time come down to Joe Montana's 4-0 in Super Bowls. So if you're going to use that criteria that Tom Brady lost Super Bowls, even though he won a slew of them, there's always going to be the Montana people out there. There's always going to be the Montana people out there that are going to be against Patrick Mahomes already because he's already lost one. But let's say, look, that argument, it's a little weak, right? Because Montana did lose in the NFC Championship game, and it's not Tom Brady's fault they continued to get back there. So what about Tom Brady? Yeah, he's got Super Bowl losses. He's got 3 of them. But he's got a lot of wins as well. So we go back to Patrick Mahomes. If he loses this Super Bowl, what does it do to his legacy? I believe it effectively closes the book of Patrick Mahomes being the greatest quarterback of all time. And that he wouldn't be if he won the Super Bowl. But with another 12 years, what would he have to do to overcome these 2 losses? And that's where we get to today and where I want to talk about. What would Patrick Mahomes have to do? Because you look at it and he's going to be 1-2 in Super Bowls. Again, this is if they lose. He'll be 1-2 in Super Bowls. If he's 1-2 in Super Bowls, guys, 2-2 doesn't do much for him, right? 500 in Super Bowls, you're not having that Brady and conversation. You're not having the Montana conversation. If you go 3-2 in Super Bowls, you do have a winning record. You're one of the very, 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 very few people that have 3 Super Bowl rings, right? One of the very few quarterbacks, count them on one hand, less than one hand, right? That have 3 Super Bowl rings. But 3-2? No, you're not going to convince those Montana folks, and you're certainly not going to convince the Brady people. How about 4-2? Does 4-2 get it done? Does a 4-2 record with, let's say, 4 or 5 MVPs, does that put him above Joe Montana at 4-0? Does it put him above Tom Brady? I don't think so. I truly don't think so. You can make an argument, and look, there will be people that will argue it, and I'm speculating on 4 Super Bowl rings, let's say 4 or 5 MVPs. Yeah, you're speculating a little bit, but you know what? It's getting to an argument of point, but I still think you come up short. How about 5? How about 5-2? 5-2 on Super Bowls. Well, I quickly type up and I go, how many Super Bowls does Tom Brady have? Oh, wait a minute. How many Super Bowls? Oh, 21 years, 7 Super Bowl titles, 3 losses. 7-3 and 5-2. Okay, pretty similar, right? I will give you that 5-2, 5 Super Bowl wins can put him in the conversation. But does it win over the Montana guys at 4-0? And does that win over the Brady argument? I think you can have the conversation at 5-2. But my contention is this. Patrick Mahomes, if he loses the Super Bowl, probably going to have to win 5 or 6 Super Bowls. He's only got 1, which means in the next 10 to 12 years, he's going to have to win half of the Super Bowls. Half of the Super Bowls that he will play in the seasons to get to the point of being the greatest of all time. When you get that second Super Bowl loss, all of a sudden, it's a different ballgame. So while all of this is positive for Patrick Mahomes, if he wins, oh yeah, if he wins at 2-1, look, you could see 4-1, you could see 5-1, and all of a sudden you're going, okay, different conversation. But if he loses, the legacy is, wow, can you dig out of that hole? Can you dig out of a 2 Super Bowl and a 1-2 Super Bowl performance with these numbers? Even if he has a great Super Bowl, the numbers are not going to look great for the Super Bowl. So the Joe Montana crowd, the Tom Brady crowd, no matter what Patrick Mahomes does in the next 10 years, they may never be satisfied that he is the greatest of all time. Weird legacy to have before you're 30 years old, that maybe you're shooting for greatest of all time. And if you fail this one game, maybe that's an unattainable goal. Andy Reid's quite similar, isn't he? A lot of people want to put Andy Reid up there right now saying, oh, you know what? He's as good as Belichick. I've heard that rumor out there, right? Well, he's done it with 2 different teams. Right? He's a consistent winner. He's done it with different quarterbacks, and he has. Andy Reid is all those things that you say. But can he ever be considered the greatest? Now, Belichick is close. I think a lot of people will say Belichick is the greatest. He was the greatest before Brady left, and then Brady left, and now people are dinging him up. There's an argument to be made in the NFL about greatest head coach. There's always the Lombardis of the world. Don Shula's crowd is going to scream and point at his record. Chuck Noll gets lost in the history books for whatever reason. Marv Levy went to 4 consecutive Super Bowls. Yeah, he lost them all. Marv Levy's got to be considered there. I'm a Ditka guy, right? Do I think he's the greatest of all time? Probably not. But you got the Hallis crew. I mean, you have a lot of, and forgive me for not mentioning everybody, Jimmy Johnson and everybody else, right? But you have a lot of coaches that you can go back on. Andy Reid is building a resume to be considered into that group, to maybe be into that conversation of, are you the greatest? Look, Andy Reid, you go to just head coaches, because I don't want to go back to his Green Bay Packers days. He did bring them to the Super Bowl. No, just the Eagles, right? The Eagles and Reid went to the playoffs 9 times, guys. 6 division titles. 5 NFC championship games. But he only won 1. Then he went on to lose the subsequent Super Bowl. Andy Reid's 0-1 in Super Bowls. He moves location. He goes to Kansas City, where he is now had just ridiculous amounts of success. Unparalleled success, in 10 seasons. He's been fantastic. Got a Super Bowl win. He's got a Super Bowl loss. Andy Reid's 1-2. Now, head coach is a little bit different than quarterbacks because you don't have a 4-0 Joe Montana out there that just dominates. You don't have a Tom Brady going 10 times. You just don't have that. Even Belichick doesn't have that, right? So it's a little bit different for head coaches. At 1-3, I think Andy Reid eliminates himself. At 1-3 in the Super Bowl, I believe no matter what he would have to do, you'd have to go out there, and Andy Reid's not exactly a young guy. You'd have to go out there, and you would have to absolutely just win 4 in a row or something of the ilk. If you lose 3 to get to 5-3, sure. But if he loses, I think the moniker is going to be, well, Andy Reid's a really good coach, but he loses big games. Well, he lost a lot of big games in Philadelphia. He lost quite a few big games here already, back-to-back years coming into this year in Kansas City, losing in the Super Bowl and losing in the AFC Championship game. He loses big games. It's going to be his moniker, isn't it? Now, with a win, hey, he's 2-2. With a win, it turns things around, right? With a win, Andy Reid, it turns things around. If he could squeak out one more, he's 3-2, took 2 different teams. Now it's a different conversation. So I think it's an interesting thing while we talk about the Super Bowl, and I like to talk about this on this channel, conversation pieces, right? Good sports radio type of pieces, except we're doing visual sports radio here. And I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear your comments below. Am I overshooting it? Give me the number if they lose, okay? There's a big if. I actually think that Kansas City probably going to win this week, but it's a big if. If Kansas City loses, can Andy Reid dig out of that hole and lose the moniker of big game loser, Andy Reid? And can Patrick Mahomes ever recover, ever? And if he can, what is the number? Does 4-2 convince you? Does 5-2 convince you? For you Montana and Brady supporters out there, would 6-2 convince you to vote for Mahomes as the greatest quarterback of all time? Or does that book effectively shut if Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles go out there and beat him on Sunday? Comment below, guys, if you like the channel. Please make sure you hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel. I could use all the subscribers I could get. Go check me out at TomBartonSports.com and Tom Barton Sports over on Twitter. Love interacting with you guys. Leave the comments here. I'll interact with you guys here as well. Enjoy the game, and let's see what kind of legacy is formed after Sunday. Have a good day, everybody.